Right.
Recording in progress.
As I was saying,
This is not a performance.
it's one of my favorite honors of the year to invite Rabbi Michelle Greenfield to offer words of Torah this Erev Rosh Hashanah.
L'Shana Tova. As Rabbi Erev said, I'm Rabbi Michelle, and as a point of visual access, I'm a short white femme with long curly brown hair and a gray dress with green circles. With gratitude to Maisie and Julie for getting us started, over the next 10 days, we get to hear from Kol Tzedek members on the theme of L'Dor Vador, from generation to generation. It's an amazing gift to hear these personal stories, to witness these connections. The theme of L'Dor Vador is an invitation to think about what we receive from parents, teachers, and spiritual ancestors. And it's also an opportunity to think expansively about the Torah we share in this world. The phrase literally means to generation and generation, and it's now kind of a catchphrase for spiritual legacy, or passing down learning and traditions. But in the Bible, the phrase is separate from and much larger than human families and human experience. Throughout Psalms and prophets, L'Dor Vador is a way to signify forever, or a really, really long time, a divine long time. God will rule for generations and generations. God's plans extend far into the future, for generations and generations. God's place will stand for generations and generations. Human kings and human lives in general will come and go each generation, but God's time has a different kind of staying power. God will be around L'Dor Vador for many of our short human generations. Ecclesiastes, always good for a reminder of our mortality, uses the word dor, generation, in a contrast to this divine timeline. Dor holech v'dor ba, v'ha'aretz le'olam omadet. Generations come and go, but the world stands forever. Our lives are short compared to God's enduring rule and enduring creations. But still, somehow, over time, this forever timeline that was only God's became shorthand for our human legacy. We took a phrase that was so big it applied to the infinite one, and we decided to use it to talk about what we teach our children. The contemporary American understanding of L'Dor Vador includes, as Rabbi Erev described, a passing of a physical Torah and also learning between generations at B'nai Mitzvah. It includes ethical wills, family education, and creating political change for future generations. We pass on wisdom and stories, hopeful that our teaching will continue past our own lifetimes. Rabbi Erev and I are both now at Kol Tzedek for our 9th High Holidays. And it was so sweet a few years ago for me to welcome the first class of kindergarteners to Torah school, remembering when so many of them were born or named in our community. It took 5 or 6 years to get to that point. And over the last year, we've gotten to celebrate B'nai Mitzvah of children who were starting kindergarten on my first day running Torah school. In my various roles as an educator, I spend so much time thinking about how to share Jewish traditions with the next generation of children, how to teach Talmud to the next generation of rabbis, how to support our teenagers as they become our next generation of adult leaders. And I love that we've watched an entire generation of Torah school students grow and learn and now become teachers. And for all that I'm immersed in this work of L'Dor Vador, I know it's not a metaphor that sits well for everybody, and it doesn't always work for me either. Maybe you don't want to pass on what you were given by previous generations. Not everybody was handed expansive and welcoming Torah. Many in our community hold generational trauma or were handed harmful beliefs or traditions. Maybe you even had to cut ties, cut the chain in order to grow your own Torah. Maybe thinking about future generations touches on a pain you feel at not being able to have children, or a pain of losing children, or, separately, maybe you feel pain of judgment about your family and choices. From our ancient texts straight through our contemporary culture, there has been a moral judgment that having children is the right, or good, or the only natural way. I think about a time when my niece was 1 or 2, and I was holding her at another synagogue's event. Somebody came up to me and told me that I looked like a natural holding her. Another person told me that maybe I would be next. It was one of the many times that I have felt invisible in Jewish community as a non-parent. I had been caring for her along with her mother since she was born. I should hope it looked natural for me to hold her. And I have never wanted to be next, though that has been questioned many times. So I want to tell you, and I will tell you, that the theme of Ledor Vador is bigger than any single family, and not just about blood or marriage or even adoption. I want to tell you that as a community, we're working so hard to see and to make seen families and legacies that are so much more expansive than biological family. But I know that doesn't take away from the pain you might have been handed, and I know that doesn't take away the cultural messages about family our culture has held for so long. So in these coming days, if this topic is challenging to you, I invite you to think expansively about generations, to think about those who helped you express yourself and who welcomed you into the communities and celebrated the identities you hold now. And I invite you to think about how you want to influence those you love. But I also invite you to sit with and acknowledge any pain and discomfort you have with this theme. I invite you to remember you're not alone, and I invite you to share your experience with others as part of our conversation around this theme. Our earliest traditions of passing down Torah from generation to generation were in fact not family-based, but rather based on teaching and learning. Pirkei Avot is a book of Mishnah that is largely the wise sayings of many generations of rabbis. It starts with a chain of transmission. The rabbis who compiled the book placed themselves, conveniently, in a direct line from God. Moshe kibel Torah miSinai u'misara leYehoshua, v'Yehoshua lizkenim, u'zkenim leNevi'im, u'Nevi'im misaruha el anshe Knesset Hagadola. Moses received Torah from Sinai, and he transmitted it to Joshua, and Joshua to the elders, and the elders to the prophets, and the prophets transmitted it to the men of the Great Assembly. Maybe this is the beginning of our understanding of Ledor Vador, a sense that we have something worth passing down, worth transmitting. When we receive and transmit Torah, we put ourselves in line with Moses, Joshua, the prophets, and the rabbis. We weren't at the top of Mount Sinai, or at Solomon's temple, or at the academy at Yavne, but we're all part of this tradition. We acknowledge that our teachers and their teachers hold and held incredible amounts of Torah. This is not to say that we simply transmit exactly what we have received. Even the early rabbis didn't see the transmission of Torah as simple and unchanged. They weren't really trying to live out the literal meaning of the Torah text. They found meaning in the text, added meaning to the text, and sometimes even twisted the meaning of the text to come to a totally different conclusion that fit their values better. In one of my favorite Talmud stories, Moses on Mount Sinai asks God, "Why are you adding all of those tiny detailed crowns and dots to the Torah you're writing for me?" God says, 10 generations from now, there will be a man named Akiva who will make mountains of meaning from each tiny dot. Upon Moses' request, God whisks him away through time and space to a seat in the back row of Rabbi Akiva's classroom. Moses can't follow the lesson, but he hears Rabbi Akiva say, "This rule was given to Moses at Mount Sinai." When we receive Torah l'dor vador, from generation to generation, we receive what our spiritual ancestors and teachers were given, but we also receive the potential for more learning and more interpretation. The concept of l'dor vador is an invitation to think about what Torah we want to keep around, to consider what learning we want to make sure is still here after this generation is gone. What do we want to cultivate so that it exists on a divine timeline and not just in fleeting human time? It's also an opportunity to think about what doesn't merit preserving, what isn't worth nourishing. So, like the rabbis in Avot, we make our statements, we write our own midrash, we interpret the dots and crowns, and so we believe that the next generation is able to expand and adapt Torah, to rewrite our midrash and reinterpret our teachings. Our ancient tradition sees Torah as expansive. The written Torah wasn't big enough. The word Torah also came to mean the Mishnah, the Talmud, the Midrash, and according to the Jerusalem Talmud, in 3 different places, the Torah that Moses received on Mount Sinai even included what future students will teach their rabbis. I read that right. The Torah includes what students would teach their rabbis, and hopefully their rabbis are listening. Torah is not static. There's no moment when the world will have all of the possible teachings. Torah expands and grows with each generation. Torah is infinite. We need to believe that there's always something new to be learned and taught, and that the next generation will be able to do that teaching. L'dor vador is an invitation to teach and also to listen to those who are younger than us. They will have so much more Torah than we do. They already do. When I was in high school, some of my teachers, they have so much Torah to share with us. It's amazing. When I was in high school, some of my teachers were among the early gay and lesbian students at HUC, the Reform Movement's rabbinical school. In the mid-90s, out students were admitted, but they had to learn from faculty members who would then refuse to sign their diplomas. These teachers shared with me a Torah of pushing boundaries and making space, of showing up in community even when we're not fully accepted. And I often think about those teachers of mine when I hear our students at KT discuss their queer identities and talk about their queer families. When laws make the world less safe for queer kids and the political discourse is terrifying, we are working l'dor vador, from generation to generation, to create spaces that are expanding and ready for all of their Torah, so much more than what my teachers experienced. Maybe they will continue this work, teaching Torah that can truly hold all of our infinitely complicated identities. Torah is ever expanding. Mordechai Kaplan famously changed the liturgy to do away with any references to Jewish chosenness and superiority. Last year, learning about these changes, our students had a very serious conversation about whether true universalism and shared social responsibility could include animals. Maybe they will grow Torah to more fully teach about the equal value of every life in ways that we don't imagine. Torah is infinite. L'dor vador, from generation to generation, we get to receive Torah, interpret it, change it, and add to it. And then, if we're lucky, we get to listen to what the next generation shares. They will throw out some of our teachings and add heaps of their own learning, more Torah. And there will still be more space because Torah is infinite. Shana Tova.
I feel like all year long, our young people get the gift of her Torah, and once a year, the grown-ups also get it. invite you to rise in body or spirit, page 57.